welcome back to Enlighten Up for episode 34, Near-Death Experiences, DNA Activation, UFOs, Bigfoot, and Starseeds with James Gilliland. We're excited to have James join our conversation today and bring us a ton of interesting information. We first get into one of his near-death experiences where he was saved by the woman in blue. Later on, we're going to talk about the origin of man and what is the salamander gene. Is it possible that we have a gene that allows us to grow a limb back? It just isn't activated yet. That brings us into DNA activation and what is it and how is it done? We get into the science of it. And later on, we're going to get into more near-death experiences, the gates of dimensions, and of course, we're going to talk a lot about the Eceti ranch that James Gilliland founded. We talk about UFOs, Bigfoot sightings, and of course, starseeds. If you know you're a starseed, then you're going to love this show. And if you don't even know what a starseed is, well, you're about to find out. So let's jump into the episode and find out what James had to share with us. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us again this week. I'm here with Lisa, Brian, and Michael will be popping in shortly. And today we have a really fun show. We are joined by James Gilliland, who is a best-selling author, internationally known lecturer, minister, counselor, multiple near-death experiencer, and contactee. He's a facilitator of many Eastern disciplines, a visionary dedicated to the awakening and healing of humanity and the earth, who teaches higher dimensional realities from experience, and he's recognized worldwide as the founder of the Gilliland Estate, also known as the Eceti Ranch, which stands for Enlightened Contact with Extraterrestrial Intelligence. James, welcome to our show.
Oh, great to be on the show.
Yeah, I have only recently, probably since last summer, found you and your work and what you're doing up at the ranch, and it's just mind-blowing in such a great way. And I'm just so excited to have you here on the show because I know our listeners are going to gain a lot of valuable information today.
Yeah, a lot of the practices we do are actually around losing your mind, around getting into that space, the space of no mind, where you get, you transcend the body and the personality and you get into that multidimensional aspect of self. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, you know what I love about you is that you really have a great way of melding science and spirit together and seeing the beauty within both. And so I kind of wanted to start a little bit at the beginning. And I know that you had a very near-death experience when you were 5 and you were visited by someone. Can you take the audience through that story?
Yeah, that was fascinating. I don't think I've ever heard anyone in their bio or their introduction listed as multiple near-death experiences. So I can't wait to hear about this.
Yeah, well, what happened when I was 5 years old? I had bronchial pneumonia, but called my parents several times and told them to come in. They didn't think I was going to make it through the night. And what was interesting is I had a woman that kept coming to me, in the wee hours of the morning, and she would stroke my head and talk to me, and then I'd pull through, and then to the next day, just get me through. And I didn't know who she was, and she came several times. And then the last time she came, she gave me something that looked like ice cream, but it wasn't cold, and told me to eat it. I think I know what it is now. I didn't know what it was before because it's a long story, but I work with German biophysicists and people with like 9 PhDs and things. And so they've actually replicated some of these things. But what happened is I kept asking for the woman in blue. Who was the woman in blue that kept coming in? And they said, you're delusional because they all wore green. They had green outfits in the hospital. And so I kept asking for this woman, and then once I ate that substance, I was never sick after that. I didn't miss a day of school. It was pretty amazing. So that was my first experience.
Well, wait a minute. You said you think you know what it is now. You can't just put that big.
Yeah.
There.
Well, I'm working with the German biophysicists, and they've actually crystallized oxygen, and they stabilize it in room temperature. So they have a crystal form of oxygen.
Wow.
And you can actually take a pill or eat it. And they also have a water. It's called Langenberg water. And it has microhydrate and has the crystallized oxygen suspended in the microhydrate. And when you drink this water, if you have an oximeter on your finger, it'll just peg almost immediately.
Huh.
And oxygen's the highest systemic antibiotic you can get. You know, if you increase your blood oxygen and raise your body pH, you'll even back cancer out of your system. So it's pretty amazing. And so this one scientist actually made this stuff. And you know, one time I took a couple of these pills. They don't have them anymore because they ran into some problems, you know, with the powers that were, you know, that are collapsing right now. And they had to stop making it. But you could drive. And I just took a couple of these pills and I drove from my place to Nevada to speak at a conference. And I was driving to like probably 17 hours. And I got there and I was totally awake. And I stayed up with some of the other speakers that night, you know, and had dinner with them and stayed up, you know, talking to some to the wee hours, got up early in the morning and did my talk and was fine, you know, but
I need that every day. That's awesome.
Yeah, we need to get that out, you know, soon. I think it'll come back out here pretty soon.
Fuck Starbucks. Let's put that shit out there.
But that's why deep breathing helps keep you healthy as well when you're breathing and oxygenating your blood.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I'm all for the shortcut. I gotta stop and deep breathe. No, give me a pill.
Well, the water's available. You know, if you go to langenbergresearch.com, you can check out the water. That's still available now.
Oh, I'm definitely gonna look into that.
So, okay, so did you know at the time who this woman was, or when did you realize who the woman was who came to you?
I had no idea who she was until she started appearing to me later. And you know, as a disclaimer, I want to say I'm not Catholic. I'm not religious at all. I'm more spiritual. But it turned out to be Mary, like Mother Mary. And she comes a lot to children, especially when they're sick and ill, and helps them, you know, either cross over or get well, one or the other. But you know, I had no idea who it was, and it was later when I was a little wiser. It's kind of a long story. I was having like telepathic conversations with her, and I figured out who she was. But she's not Catholic either. You know, she's a universal being. You know, she's beyond religion.
Yeah, I I just had my own experience with people yesterday who thought I was Luciferian because I didn't mention Christ in one of my videos. But yeah, it's incredible how religion can take something so pure and ruin it, basically.
Oh yeah, you know, a good person to have on your show is Michal Ledwith. Do you know him?
No.
He used to be an advisor to the Pope. You know, he was way up there in the food chain.
Oh wait, no, you had him on your show recently, didn't you?
Yeah,
I listened to that. No, he's great.
He just brought out a new book, and I'm trying to think of the name of it. I think it was called Saving Jesus, and it's pretty interesting. And he gives the whole story, the true story. And he had access to all the catacombs underneath the Vatican and all that. And that's why he left the church. He said, "You're not telling the truth. You're not telling the true story." And it's a whole different story. And it's a very empowering story. Like, it empowers everybody. It doesn't put you in a dependency program. It puts you in an empowering program, you know, when you read his work.
His and Dan Brown.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you got to make these guys friends. You know, make them your buds. Don't hold them so far away. You know, they're just a thought away.
I completely agree, and I know Lisa does too. I think that for me, I was raised Catholic, but I had a problem with the church very young, and because I remember just sitting there thinking, like, you're lying, you're not telling these people the truth. And I didn't like how we were made to feel powerless and we had to look up to a power as opposed to be part of that power. So, yeah, I completely agree with you.
Well, I don't understand. You know, they swing around the incense and they speak Latin and nobody knows what they're saying. And you're just going, Am I here now? Why am I here? Am I here out of guilt or duty, or how am I going to even know what they're saying or learn anything here? And it's kind of, and I don't want to belittle any church or anything, but I just think a lot of the churches, one of their problems is that they are distracting people from making their own personal God connection. They're becoming the go-between, and then you pay them and they tell you what's going on, and it's really a distraction, from you doing your own work, doing your own research, do your own meditation, learn to heal yourself, all that stuff.
Yeah,
the church doesn't want that because, I mean, if you really look at it, if we go to a church, the biggest contribution that we make is financial. They need money. And if everyone started doing their own thing, the churches wouldn't exist because they wouldn't have any more money.
Yeah, I always wonder, if God's omnipresent, omnipotent, everything, how come he can't balance his checkbook? How can he just can't manifest, whatever they need? It's kind of
maybe he is because all these suckers are giving money.
Yeah, exactly.
Who's the author of that Saving Jesus book?
Michal Ledwith. It's Miceal, and it's Ledwith, I believe. Yeah, he talks about the hamburger universe, and he said, we have heaven above us, hell below us, and we're stuck in the middle. Yeah. And he said, really, it's a multidimensional experience, and it's so much bigger than that. And even our history is wrong. The origin of man, the history that we've been told is wrong. And we didn't start in Africa. We started in Australia, which is another long story. But the origin of man actually began in Australia and had everything to do with ships and visitors.
You want to go into more detail on that? Because that's very interesting.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about that.
There's a place called Gosford Glyphs. And if you go to this place, and it's the Strongs, if you type in Gosford Glyphs or the Strongs, they've done the most research on it. And when I went to Australia, I hooked up with the king of the Raven tribe, Brendan Murray, and these other guys. And we were doing things together, and I was seeing all these things happening in other dimensions and explaining it to them. And I kind of blew their minds, and so they brought me into the fold, and they started showing me. We have in Eceti, Australia over there now, too, as well. But they showed me the origin of man, and it's all written in stone in the Gosford Glyphs. And it's a combination of, like, hieroglyphs, star glyphs, and petroglyphs. But the people that know hieroglyphs can read them. And it basically starts out, and it just says that, excuse me, this massive ship comes down, and there was a man developing here naturally, a knuckle dragger. They call it the Denisovian man. Some people call them Neanderthals, things like that. And they added their DNA to this guy, jumped his DNA up, and then they talked about other star nations coming in, and a lot of this stuff was happening, believe it or not, almost 600 million years ago. There was people here on the earth with boots, wearing boots, and they've smashed trilobites and things like that, human boot prints. They know, archaeologists know that our history is incorrect, but most of our stuff goes back that we have recorded to 450,000 years ago with the Anunnaki, and they actually came from ancient Lyra. They're very tall, and they had the cone heads. They're very tall beings, and then they were doing hybrids, and half human, half Anunnaki, and other people jumped in the mix. So the true story of Earth is that there were several colonization programs, excuse me, that happened here, and they had to start over because of pole shifts and huge natural, excuse me, disasters. And we're just a big genetic zoo down here. We're like a galactic zoo of both human, plant, and animal genetics, and that's why the Earth is so important right now.
So when me asking, what's the difference of looking at some hieroglyphs or whatever on rocks versus reading some old scripts on, say, Adam and Eve? Not that I believe in either, but to me, it's just like, how do you back up either one?
Well, if it's written in stone and they've dated the stone, it's pretty obvious. But
they can also they have their scripts too. It's like, so I'm just not trying. Well, I'm trying to figure out what makes you feel so confident? That's just not like a story that people, put on a rock.
Well, I mean, it's in their legends as well. But if you take, let's say, these parchments and things like that, they don't last very long. Most of them, you just get a little piece of the story here or there. Now, if you want to go by the Bible, basically the Bible was taken from a whole room full of books, and they chose which books they make into one canon, under King James. And basically they're a little slow in putting it together, so we whacked a couple of their heads off, and they got it together really quick. So that's the canon, the Bible that everybody is the King James version.
Yeah, but I guess I don't see the difference of believing an Adam and Eve type storyline versus a storyline that you're saying is all.
Well, no, I mean, it is an Adam and Eve story, but the only difference is God was a very advanced being, not, when people use the name God, right? They have the bearded gods. All these religions have a bearded God attached to it. Well, who created them? And if you're worshiping this bearded God, you're actually worshiping one of the ancient ones that came here, that colonized the earth a long time ago. They call them the Anunnaki, and there's references to them all throughout the Sumerian text. And it just means those who came from heaven to earth, those who landed on earth and started doing a lot of experimentation.
It's just, for me, I never really believe in Adam and Eve, and even when I heard it from the start, and I get the same gut reaction when I hear something like this.
Well, think about this. You got Adam and Eve, right? And then you got the two kids, and Cain and Abel, right? And then one of them kills, I think, was it Abel? I can't remember. I think
Cain killed Abel.
Cain killed Abel, yeah. You got one guy left. Who did he have sex with to procreate?
Oh no, I like I said, I debunked that in my own mind.
Yeah, but I mean,
this common sense that you're saying. But to me, it's like that was just a written legend, just like what you're saying too, is a potential written legend. And I'm just imagining in my mind a bunch of people just looking up at the stars, trying to figure out where they came from, and they're like, hey, look, think about this story. Oh, that's a great story. Put it down on a rock.
Yeah.
That's kind of like what I'm thinking.
Well, and also, how long has that rock been there?
Yeah, that rock's been there thousands of years. But
also, I shouldn't have said the rock. I meant the carvings on the rock.
Yeah.
But the date really doesn't matter if you're following what I'm trying to say.
Well,
I'm following you, but what I'm saying is that you can throw everything out if you want. I mean, that's fine with me because I have attachment to that. I'm just looking at research. You look at Michael Tellinger's work. You're looking at a lot of these other Egyptologists, their work and everything else. A lot of Zachariah Sitchin's work. The ancient Sanskrit, the ancient Sumerian text, all that stuff. When you research all that together, they're all saying the same story. And they're talking about these beings that had amazing powers. Most of them had beards. They had ships. Some ships were physical. Some were pure energy. Some were light ships. And they all had different qualities. They had different armaments on them. And it's all, it's written on clay tablets, basically, that God knows how old they are. But, Michael Tellinger's done some great work on this, and he's one of the latest people that covered all of this. But,
I wonder why they had beards, because that is an image that you rarely see attached with beings from off our planet, is facial hair. I don't know why, that just struck me as odd.
Well, I'll tell you why, because there's multiple beings. There are beings like the little grays with the black eyes. They're not really part of our group, and they're from a whole nother system. And then you've got some reptilian beings, and then you've got all different types of beings out there. You even have feline beings. They're all written in history, and they made stone statues to them. And then you have people that look a lot like us, only they're a lot taller. You've got the cone heads. They've got their bones. They've got their skulls and everything. All of that's there. But it's like, what happens is I've got like 36 years research into this, and after a while, when you put it all together, it tells the story, and it all fits together. And when you hang out with the Aboriginal elders, and you hang out with the Native American elders, and you start hearing their ancient stories. I mean, they all point to the Pleiades. All of them do, and say that's where we came from. You know, so why would they all do that if there isn't some reality or some basic truth to that? And actually, the Pleiadians were the ones that started the Atlantis and Lemurian colonies. They were the originators of those two colonies, which actually fell, you know, due to misuse of technology by the Atlanteans. Kind of like we're doing now.
So you're when you say like the people have been here for like 600 million years, do they have the instrumentation to tell from these carvings like that it goes back that far?
Well, there's a guy, Michael Cremo, and he has a book called Forbidden Archeology, and it's all the archaeology that it's like they call it oops art and things like that. The stuff that they tried to keep out of the Smithsonian and keep out of the story because it doesn't fit in. And you know, they have ornate jewelry that was made, you know, that's 500,000 years old. They have million, you know, lumps. They have things stuck in lumps of coal. They found diodes, you know, actually electronic parts. You know, I can go on with all the things that they found, and Michael Cremo's work, he's taken it up to 600 million years, where, you know, there's boot prints that have smashed trilobites. So this is all documented, you know, in alternative archaeology, you might say, or the people that are not trying to fit everything into the mainstream story.
Yeah. So here's a question. You talked about how we've had multiple different beings coming down to this earth and I guess fiddling around with the DNA. What would be the purpose of these beings doing that?
Well, one of the things is that when the first beings, the ancient Lyrians, those are the really tall ones, the bearded gods, when they started adding their DNA to our DNA, the knuckle draggers that were here earlier, now you've got the DNA of the gods, right? Mixed in with human DNA. And that's why we're so important, because these other guys want the DNA of the gods, you know, so they can do their tinkering. But there's a lot more to the story, but life is just precious, and we don't realize it, but we have, you know, the junk DNA that we have in our body is not junk. It's just not activated. And once those things start getting activated, a lot of crazy things start happening. You become telepathic. You can start bilocating. You can activate the Salamander Gene, which actually you can regrow an arm. And, you know, I've worked with biophysicists that are working on this right now. And you know, they can validate all of this.
So who
has regrown an arm?
That gets into another story. Look into the secret space program. They have that technology right now. If they have somebody that's hurt or loses an arm, they can actually, it's almost like you know, right now they're printing organs. I mean, that's in the mainstream news. They're printing organs. It's that same technology. They can take your DNA and print, you know, an arm if they need to, or even further. They said they basically just need your brain functioning, and they can reprint your whole body if they need to.
So they've isolated a gene called the Salamander Gene, which allows people to regrow their limbs?
Exactly, and it's not activated. But that same gene, when you activate it, you're going to live longer, you're going to be healthier, because your body's just going to keep, you know, fixing itself.
I wonder if I could lick my eyes with that gene.
Probably.
Oh, God. So, okay, I've heard this as well, that, you know, our DNA strands have been deactivated down to 2, which basically completely dumbs us down and makes us slaves, not allowing us to reach our full potential, so that we can, like you said, have these gifts of telepathy and things that make us much more strong and harder to manipulate. So I've heard different things, and I'm curious what your take is on it, James. I've heard that, or first I heard that we originally had 12 strands, but then I've heard that there's more than that.
Mm-hmm. You know, there's a lot of stories about that, and having the luxury of working with these geneticists, you know, he was looking at my DNA and things like that, and I don't want to go in there because I don't want to say I'm special or anything, but I have a lot more activated than most. And I don't know if it's a near-death experience or the reason I chose to incarnate here or what, but how that happened. But we can reactivate a lot of that DNA, and it's already being reactivated now. The sun is actually doing it, and there's a lot of different ways of activating that DNA. Now, if you study the DNA of a lot of the yogis and lamas, they have more codons activated, and their DNA goes through a change, and that's been researched and studied. But I'll tell you something too. This is really an interesting concept. You can actually take DNA, and water holds DNA, and you can transfer DNA with a laser, and you can send a frog DNA through a salamander egg, and that will become a frog, or either way, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's cool.
They have that technology now. So if you have an advanced being, how hard would it be to take their DNA and just shoot it right into us or into an embryo, and then we're going to come out a whole different animal? We're going to have a lot more DNA activated and things like that. And that's been going on for a long time. And when they do that, those people, when they are raised here, especially within society, they go, what am I doing here? I don't fit in. I don't belong here. Why do these people behave this way? And they're just operating on a whole different frequency.
Okay, Nicole, so this sounds like a legitimate version of DNA activation versus the 1-800 number DNA activation that you want me to do.
What? That's okay. Explain why you say that, Brian.
Because you told me to have my DNA activated, and I had to call somebody, and there was nothing scientific about it. I mean, we're talking about science here versus I call somebody on the phone and she does, she can activate me over the phone. And
okay, but that's also an option. It's not saying that it's one or the other. Why can't it be both?
Because the one way sounds legit and the other one sounds like it's $3 a minute.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there that you kind of want to avoid. And I don't want to bash anybody or anything else, but, there's a lot of claims being made. I see these people that have these avatar programs, and for $4,000 or $5,000, you can go there for the weekend, you come out like an avatar or things like that. And I go, well, I think it's a little more to it than that. And, even The Secret, the thing about The Secret, the real secret is if you don't heal your stuff, if you don't go back and clean up your childhood and everything else, you're not going to manifest squat diddly. So you gotta go in there and clean up your past and clean up all the wounds and traumas and wrong conclusions from past experiences, and then you can start really working the energy. But a lot of these things are very they're very expensive, and they're like drive-through. It's almost like a McDonald's. You can drive through and you're an avatar or you're a master. It just doesn't work that way. I've got 36 years intensive study with lamas and yogis and elders from all over the planet, and scientific research as well.
This makes sense to me. I mean, it really, I can really get my head around this, and I never could the 1-800 DNA activation RS.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, it's not called that, but you're totally taking the piss on that. So, but I get it. So,
and it's a toll call. It's not an 800.
Okay, so I'm curious because you said you've had multiple near-death experiences. What was your other one or more?
Well, I was 25 and I was out in the ocean and I was out body surfing. There's about 6-foot waves going on, and the next thing you know, they're like 25 to 27-foot waves, and there was no way to get around them. They actually sucked the water out when they came in, and so. Anyway, I got caught in that and got slammed by 3 waves, and I finally just gave it up and went through that tunnel everybody talks about. And I didn't stop to talk. I just went right straight towards this golden light. And I saw all these levels that I went through, and I ended up in what they call the Plane of Bliss. And when you're in that level, you're a light being, but there's a greater consciousness and light around you and energy. And I had a conversation with it while I was hanging out there, but that was the big game changer for me. That totally changed my reality.
So how did you come back?
Well, I had a conversation with it. The first thing I said, how can I stay? And it came back to me. It was like a telepathic message. And it came back and it said, I never told my children when to come or go. That's free will. And then I said, well, how can I earn the right to stay? And it came back and said, you can't earn what is given freely and unconditionally. And I go, wait a second. I've been given this image of this wrathful God with a laptop taking notes. And this guy doesn't even have an ego. You know, he can't judge. It's whatever it is. It's not even a he. It's just pure consciousness and energy. And so the next thing I asked was, how can I serve? Because you're so grateful when you're in that energy. There's no words for it. It's just pure bliss. And it came back and it said, what do you want to do? What brings you joy? And I said, you know, I want to come back and teach people about the true nature of Source, you know, what it really is. And I heard As You Wish, and the next thing I know, I was back in my body and they're pulling me in, you know, and pulling me up on the beach. But that was my experience with it. And then since then, it's like the gate's been left open, and I've been going up and down the dimensions and experiencing, you know, the other civilizations, the multidimensional civilizations out there, you know, different, you know, and it's a pretty interesting thing to navigate. You know, there are levels you don't want to go into, and you really need to know how to maintain your self-authority and how to heal unseen negative influences. But there's higher levels that are just beyond imagination. They're just pure bliss when you connect with these beings.
Why do you think death is always that, or maybe not always, why is it often that gateway? Why isn't just it, I'm in my house and
meditating?
I mean, yeah, why do I have to almost die to have this experience? Why can't it be a near life experience?
Well, it can actually, and we actually put people through near life experiences at the ranch because that energy is transferable. And so basically you don't have to do it that way. If you want to put the time in and do your meditation time and keep your energies clear and not get weighed down with all the craziness of this world, you can have those experiences. You know, the lamas and yogis do it all the time. If you go and hang out with those guys, you know, they'll show you how to do it. But you really have to dedicate a lot of time and energy into that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've experienced that briefly, very briefly. Mm-hmm. But I was in meditation when I experienced it, and I was at a Vipassana course, and I'll never forget it. It was day 4. I remember it was it was a 2-hour meditation, and the time that was 2 hours felt like 10 minutes. I've never been at more peace with myself, with all that is. I didn't experience my physicality anymore. I was just energy. And it was the most, like you said, it was the most blissful, but not overwhelming blissful, not like excited blissful, like very peaceful blissful. And it completely shifted me and opened up my perception when I came out of there to try so many new things, and led me down a very spiritual path for after that. So it is. I agree with you. It's completely possible to attain it. I think it's the near-death ones that really are exciting to people who haven't experienced it. So
yeah, it's a crash course, you know, and you weren't really ready for it when it happens, you know. But I don't know. I almost felt like that whole thing was orchestrated too to get me on my path, because, you know, when that happened, I was actually in commercial real estate. I had my own office. I had people working for me and everything else, and I was very materialistic, you know, very left brain, and that just turned my world upside down. I just went on a journey after that, and, you know, gave away a lot of my stuff, sold the office, and went out and I lived in the redwoods, you know, got a tent, and because I couldn't function in that world anymore for a while. It took me a long time to get grounded again.
What led you to Washington?
Well, I kept having visions, and I was actually teaching self-mastery courses and inner sensitivity training courses in Santa Cruz, California. And I kept having visions, and I saw this huge mountain, a beautiful mountain. I saw a river, and I saw a little mountain behind it, and I couldn't figure out why the little mountain was so important. And in the visions, I kept seeing little mountain written across the top of the vision. And I go, this makes no sense whatsoever. And what's funny is I threw the map away. I actually took a map and I used a pendulum and I divined where it was on the map. I threw the map away and forgot about it, and I ended up in the same spot anyway.
With the place that you divined with your pendulum, with the place that you are now?
Exactly. It's like the universe kind of, things are planned out a lot of times, and if you pay attention. But, I just delayed it a little bit, but I ended up exactly where I was supposed to be anyway. But what's funny is that the place, it's on Little Mountain Road. That's the name of the road that it's on, which is where Little Mountain came in. It didn't make any sense at the time.
Which would explain why it was written, because it was probably on a sign.
Yeah, exactly.
So how did Eceti evolve into what it is now?
Well, when I first got there, I had a vision, and I was just creating a healing center. I wanted to use, the latest, therapies, both spiritual and mental and emotional and actually physical, therapies out there, excuse me, for the planet. And that was my beginning goal. And so, I was building it, and I was out there in the middle of nowhere building this big ark out of a bridge, that came across the river. And the house is actually built out of an old bridge, but the main house anyway. But the people kept, going, who's this crazy guy out there building this ark out in the middle of the field? And that old saying, if you build it, they will come. I used to say, what they really said is, if you build it, you were dumb, because nobody was coming. But eventually, people started coming. They started feeling the energy there, and they started doing. I was doing a lot of counseling work, and I was teaching classes, and it just kept building and building and building, and I just stuck with the vision, and now we have thousands of people coming up to the ranch.
When did the UFOs start showing up?
That's an interesting story. I was doing an all-day meditation, and I was sitting in this meditation chair, and I was telepathically having a conversation with these beings, and I felt this pure love and joy again, very high beings, and I was asking them, where are you coming from? I was trying to figure out what dimension they were coming from, and they said, we're on the 5th, and some of us are in the 6th, that we work together. And I said, really? And I said, it made sense to me, feeling the energy coming from them. And then they said, actually, we're on a ship. And then I go, okay, I'm losing it now. I'm getting ungrounded. This is my imagination. I'm going to break this meditation and go out and plant some trees and get grounded. And so I walk out the door, and my sister and her friends came running up, banging on the door. And they said, did you see it? Did you see it? And I said, see what? And they said, there's a big light ship right over the house at the time. And so that was my first experience, where I had to kind of integrate these higher dimensional beings with my other spiritual, they're all throughout the ancient religions. They're replete throughout the ancient religions. And I had to kind of integrate it then with my spiritual practices, because, it's not just Jesus, Buddha, Mary, Babaji, Kuan Yin, the masters that everybody knows. It's, you've got Palladians, you've got the Orion Council of Light, you've got Andromedans, Arcturians, all these other beings. You've got beings that are a collective. They all have the same names. One group, they call them the Laka, and they're like 13th dimensional beings. But, I had to, over the years, I had to integrate all that and then start really understanding that, what we've been told about who we are and our origins and the origin of man and our true nature, that we're not just a body and a personality. We're a multidimensional spirit that has a body and a personality. I had to just integrate all that. And over the years, I finally figured it out. And, I finally figured out the whole universe. It took me forever. And what I figured out was it all fits perfect into the great mystery, and because you'll never figure it out. Your mind, you cannot capsulate this in your mind. It's not big enough. The intellect is not big enough. But you have an emotional body, you have an etheric body, you have these other spiritual bodies where you can grasp this. But, you know, it's like, how do you capsulize God in your intellect? You know, you can't, because the best thing we can do is get an image of a little old man with a beard and a laptop taking notes and a lightning bolt, you know, getting ready to punish people. And that's the program that we've been sold down here.
So it sounds to me like it's you, and I hate to say the word supposed extraterrestrial activity at your ranch, and you know, again, it's such a hard thing to put your finger on unless you've experienced it. And I would say most people haven't, and that's why I think it's hard for most people to put their finger on it. But just listening to your story, it really sounds like it's connected to you.
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely it is. Well, I've been them. I have full memory of actually being them. They brought back those memories. And so we've all, you know, we're an eternal soul that has a body. You know, we're in these multicolored, multicultural meat suits down here, but the truth of the fact is that we're a soul. That soul is eternal, and it's been all over the place. And so, you know, we've been, you know, every race on the planet. We've been other off-world races. We actually go all the way back to the source in our highest body, where we're totally one with the source. And it's hard to explain, but on a basic nuts and bolts level, we do have triple PhD Boeing engineers and Lockheed Skunk Work engineers and Air Force base commanders and pilots and air traffic controllers and people that have come to the ranch, and they've given testimony, and they've seen these ships, and they said, you know, these things are landing, morphing into three, back to one, making right angle turns at several thousand miles an hour. They said, these aren't ours. They go, we don't know who they are, but they're definitely not ours.
Yeah, you've had like people up there, from what I understand, who I think it was with A&E who were up there, and then they were contacting people from NASA and confirming that it wasn't their ships.
Yeah, we had J-Tracker and we had Heavens Above, both sites open, and you know, we proved it wasn't you know, Evastat or the space station or the shuttle or
iridium flares.
Yeah, iridium flares or the tool bag that they dropped. We had all the data right there, and we had we've had so many people come up there that have done the research and proven that, you know, they're not ours. I mean, Jimmy Church brought his people up with Fade to Black and Coast to Coast. We had Clyde Lewis came up and he brought his engineers up, and they were looking at all the data. And I'll tell you a little story about Clyde Lewis. You had to ask him about his story. He had a encounter with, this is really off the story here, but he had an encounter with Bigfoot while he was there, and it turned him upside down, and he didn't want to talk about it. He said, nobody's going to believe me. I'm not going to talk about it. And I said, Clyde, I got the photographs of the footprints, and we have a juvenile Bigfoot that hangs out up there, and he likes to turn people upside down. He likes to run up to them and skid and stop and smile and then run off. It's a game he likes to play. And he's done that with quite a few people, and very well-known people.
So it's very funny that you just brought this up, because I've told this to Lisa. And one of the reasons why I feel so compelled to come up there this year is because I feel very connected to the Bigfoot, and I've had them show up in my meditations, where there's a very like compassionate, we're hugging. It's almost like there's transference of intelligence coming in, or downloads through these interactions. And I just think, and I know I've listened to your show where you've had people come up and say they've heard the Bigfoot.
And they've seen it.
Who are the Bigfoot? Where are they from? You
know, we just had, there's a woman there that it's on our YouTube. Tiffany is her name, and she was there with Peter O'Toole's son was there, and they had an encounter with Bigfoot. It's on the, I think it's on the Eceti Stargate on there. It's pretty funny, but, and he saw like multiple ships while he was there, and you can hear him talking in the background with his English accent. You know, he's going, oh my God, you know, like this when these ships are flying in 7 at a time. It's pretty funny, but we have a lot of those. But there's so many people that see it. Now, the Native Americans have a story, and, their ancient story said, some are very benevolent, and, the old ones weren't so benevolent, and the benevolent ones helped them get rid of the other ones. But there's a lot of
Bigfoots.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of different stories. I think, now we found some hair up there and had it analyzed by a fiber specialist and a forensic guy, and it was about almost 4 feet long, perfectly hollow. And he said that we can't manufacture this. He said, what is this, alien? And he said it's silicon based, and it has other trace minerals in it, but it's perfectly hollow.
So where is Bigfoot from?
Well, here's my theory is, one, it's part of the human experience that evolved in nature. And just like shamans and things like that can shapeshift and disappear and bilocate, that, live in nature, they have those abilities. They've been around for a long time. I've watched them just phase out right in front of me and disappear. So I know they can do that. And then I also think there is one that's like an android that the off-worlders use, like as a big bad dog, and if they're doing some very sensitive work in an area and they need protection, they have this guy running around, because, the hair was not, it was manufactured, basically, the hair that we found up there. And nobody could explain it. Their first words were, what is this, alien? That was the first thing they said, and
they didn't know who you were, what you represented.
No. And there are areas, like, I know where Bigfoot hangs out, and I don't tell other people where it is, because I think they're their own nation and they need to be left alone. A lot of people go up there just for their ego and try to become famous, and some people might even want to hunt it just to shoot one, so they can.
It is America.
Yeah, exactly. And so I don't tell people. I know where they hang out. I could go up there but the Native Americans have a saying: if you go to find Bigfoot, you'll never find it. But if it wants to find you, it will. So they're going to tune into your energy and kind of read you. And if you're not at a certain frequency, or if they don't feel a lot of love and joy and compassion, you'll never see them. And
how much does that tie into everything we talk about here? It's all about
it's all about frequency. So your base emotions like fear and guilt and anger and things, that has a really low frequency to it. And when you get up in the higher frequencies, you have love and joy and bliss and service to others and things like that. That has a higher frequency to it. So the more you drop your old wounds and traumas in the baser frequencies, the more you rise in frequency. The more you rise in frequency, you're going to have these experiences. They're going to make themselves known to you. But it's, we live in a vibrational continuum. It's all about raising your frequencies.
So is that why there's so much activity at your ranch? Are they because of your own frequency?
Well, the ranch itself is a stargate. It's like a vortex. It has extremely high energy. And there's the veils between worlds are very thin there. So when people come there.
Why do you think that is?
It's kind of, it had that energy before I got there. It was like a sacred place or a power spot. And, over the, the years we've been there, we've been doing a lot of ceremony, a lot of meditation, a lot of process-oriented therapy, and that goes into the land. So we've had elders from all over the world come there and do ceremony and bless the land and create medicine wheels and things like that. So,
why do you think this wasn't an important Native American site?
Oh, it was. It was at one time. But it goes back even further. It was actually an ancient Lemurian site. So it goes way back.
Huh.
That makes sense because for people who meditate, it's suggested that they always meditate in the same place because you anchor your energies there, and it becomes easier and easier for you to raise your frequency because of that area, which is what you're doing at the ranch with all your ceremonies.
Yeah, we have. If you go into the galactic medicine wheel, that energy is so strong, and there's a gate for each star nation. And if you have star family in your lineage, in your spiritual lineage, and you walk into that gate, I watch people just hit the ground and start crying and have huge openings and awakenings when they go into there. We have another mound, we call it the Lemurian Mound, where it's very ancient. There's a place there you can feel real strong. There was an old Lemurian master that used to sit there and meditate for years, and that energy is there. You know, there's other places, like Joshua Tree has some places. I don't want to go too public on it, but it's not Giant Rock, but it's further out, where the elders used to gather there, and it's all crystal. The whole mountain is crystal. And boy, you go there and talk about, you know, jumping dimensions. And we actually went there and did a ceremony, and you could see pictures of us actually disappearing. You could see right through us and then reappearing. It was pretty interesting.
Oh, wow. So, okay, this brings me to my next question. What would you say most people's reasons for coming up there is, and what would you say they end up leaving with?
Well, a lot of people come up because, you know, they're processing a lot of stuff and they need help understanding what's going on. You know, there's a shift happening on the planet, and there's so much energy coming in right now, and this is measurable. NASA knows about it. The cosmic rays are off the scale. Gamma rays and also UV, everything. The whole Earth is heating up, expanding, and that affects your bioelectric fields around your body, and it also puts people in process where they have to let go of the old wounds and traumas and wrong conclusions from past experiences. So a lot of people come up there because they're going through a process. They need help. They need help to clear these energies, and they need tools to keep their energies clear, and practices so they can, you know, we teach Qigong, which is the most ancient form of Qigong, and some other things that help people center in and balance, you know, achieve balance and things like that. So, and then the classes we teach, the conferences we have up there, there are people from all over the world. You know, there's authors, scientists, healers, people from all over the world come and lecture there. And, you know, it's a very eclectic place for sharing. There's people that have come up there and they want to turn it into this kind of retreat or this kind of retreat or you know, make a church out of it or something like that. And I said, no, this is for everyone. You know, this is a place where everybody can come and share. And it's not going to be labeled, you know, any one thing.
I was just going to say, so to answer Nicole's question, people come away with a plethora of different things when they come up then.
Yeah, it depends on what they need, what they're seeking. Some people just want to see a ship, you know, and they come up and they see the ships, and then that cracks the door. And once you crack the door, they walk through it. And then next question is, okay, who's on the ships? And why do I feel this connection to these ships, you know? And it just keeps opening from there. And
I think that's really interesting what you just said, that some people, they just want to see a ship and they don't think beyond that. And then that you said there, the next question is, well, who's on it? And I think that's a fascinating journey to start.
Yeah, and it's sad that disclosure things that are going on right now is that it's the same old stuff. You know, they're very controlled. The narrative is controlled. They keep it, you know, in the military. They keep it nuts and bolts. They keep it, you know, they keep it in the past, you know, Roswell and things like that. And you're going, come on, guys, you know, can we go beyond this? We know they're here. They're appearing all around the world. Now we want to find out who's on these ships and how can they benefit humanity, or are they detrimental? And if they're detrimental, how do we take care of this? So, you know, in the interest of national security, we should find these answers out, and we shouldn't go shooting at beings that are, you know, thousands, if not millions or billions of years ahead of us with technology that could probably turn the planet into a cinder. It's not, to me, it's not wise to go after these things aggressively with our primitive technology.
Well, when has our country ever acted with wisdom in regards to to matters of national security?
Well, that, and just even going all the way back to the Indians and what we did to them, you know, we just
exactly.
Fear. There's so much fear.
Yeah, my great grandmother was actually Cherokee. I have my card. I went down and registered, so we're we're a mix. We're Scotch, Irish, and Cherokee, which is an interesting mix.
That is interesting. It reminds me of one of my favorite stand-up comedians, Dane Cook. He does this bit where he talks about, you know, that contact, that first contact that we get, the ship opens, and it's this giant Native American, and it's basically like, yeah, we're done. Good try. We took wrong side.
Yeah, exactly. You know, well, you know, there is some truth to that, believe it or not, because that is who's returning. You know, the pyramid builders, the ancient ones, they're actually returning right now, and you know, we haven't done a real good job with the planet, and our society is still pretty aggressive, and so you know, we're gonna have to go through some major evolution pretty quick.
Brian, Michael,
present.
Would you guys be interested in going up to Eceti? And
you couldn't keep me away. I mean, it's
what?
Fascinating, and you know, there are. I know I'm, you know, quote unquote a skeptic, but I mean, just listening to everything that he's doing there and what you're about, it's fascinating and mind-boggling. And you know, that's kind of why I said when he was talking about DNA activation, and you know, you introduced me to that concept, and it sounded laughable when you mentioned it, and it just and listening to some science behind it, it's intriguing.
So what you're saying is I'm really shitty at talking about DNA activation.
No, you know, and I told you from day one when you told me that it was a phone call and the person didn't even have to touch my body, which is where my DNA resides. I could not get my mind around it.
But why wouldn't your DNA also be in your energetic field?
I don't know.
Because your physical body is made up of energy. So I think
here's a good concept to think about. So we know scientists know there's at least 11 dimensions out there. They can't measure them, and a lot of them demand physical evidence of non-physical events, which is kind of crazy. It's not logical. But we know there's at least 11 dimensions out there. And we know that we have energy fields around our body. That's been measured, and everything else. And a lot of even acupuncture and things like that, you know, deal with this, you know, the different nodes and energy levels. I think when you stick a needle in somebody, it's a little antenna that's tapping those other energies. But, you know, we know that. Now, we know that everything goes, that if you take mass and you accelerate it, it's going to become energy. And if you accelerate it one more step, it's going to become light.
Right.
And if you can accelerate the light somehow, it's going to become consciousness. So in the ancient teachings, they say everything begins in consciousness, steps down into light, steps down into energy, and then becomes mass. And so if you could work on the level of consciousness and create from that level, you can actually alter mass. You can change mass. Now, I'm not saying these people can do it. I'm saying it is a potential.
Right. Well, science backs that up. That's why I can agree with this. I mean, everything you just said, science confirms that. Yes, we can't do it. We can't prove it, but the equation on the chalkboard works out.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, it's interesting because you really, until you can get out of this meat suit, you know, and get past your personality self, you can't experience these other dimensions, although they are there and they're waiting, you know, they're waiting for us to connect. And all these other higher dimensional beings are like cheerleaders, you know, we call it dazzle duty. They bring their ships in, they power up, they do all these things, and people scream and yell and holler and get all excited and everything else. And all they're doing is saying, hey, there's a lot more going on here than what you know. and again, that cracks the door.
So, Nicole, this may or may not surprise you, but I'm a lifelong Trekkie. I've always watched all the different, you know, Star Trek shows. And, I mean, this world, this realm of, you know, we're not just on the third rock from the sun. has fascinated with me, and I can absolutely get my mind around. So that's why you couldn't keep me from going up to the Eceti.
Yeah. Okay, hold on a second. The reason why I ask is because, Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong.
I was just going to say it, so
Go
you're
ahead.
not wrong.
Okay, you say it then.
She asked you, and you said you couldn't drag me there.
I didn't know what you were talking about.
Oh.
You just said, hey, there's some ranch with some, crazy yogi guy. I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound exciting. And now that I met the crazy yogi guy, it's like, well, yeah, let's go. So again, it was all in your sales pitch. It's like the 1-900 DNA activation.
But I'll tell you, there's a thing about, there's a big difference between women and men. And women actually process in their emotional body, and they have more access to information. And, they leave us men in the dark, in the dust all the time because, we're trying to figure out what happened and they're already off to 2 or 3 other subjects.
Right.
But by nature, women are more accepting to this. They're more spiritual. They're more emotional. They're in touch with their emotions and things like that. So it's like, and so a lot of times when you talk to men, you have to go into the science realm, and that's the only way, you can, and that's what I can work on all the different levels. If people want to hear the science behind it, I can go there. If they want to hear the spiritual, higher dimensional stuff, I can go there, or whatever's necessary.
Right, and that's why I'm connecting, and I think that's why everybody's connecting. But Nicole, until you just now, a few seconds ago, said that this is the same thing, I had no idea. I still, even up to this podcast recording, I did not know this is what you were talking about, back in December. So.
Plus, he said that in front of my son, which Alex then replied, oh, gosh. He got up. I think he gave Brian a hug, and he said, I'm so happy to hear you say that.
Just don't let him listen to this episode then.
Maybe you should put a headset on him and say, check this out.
I think
you know why people are so involved in Star Trek and Star Wars and things like that? Because that's more truth. If you want to make a religion around that stuff, there's a lot more truth in that than most of the religions on the planet, unfortunately. And also, too, in our past history, we came from the stars. We lived in some of these advanced civilizations, and it's triggering memories. And we're really guided to these things, and we want more. We want to see what's going on and things like that because it's actually, you do have reference points deep within you on a soul level that are really want to know, what's going on beyond, this kind of mundane program we have called 3D reality here on Earth.
Yeah, no, that's true. I have a friend, he went through his spiritual awakening, I think it was 2011 or 12 or something like that. And it was from a movie. It was from a Star Wars or Star Trek movie. He was sitting in the theater watching, and all of a sudden he started crying and he couldn't understand why. And from that moment, all of a sudden he started getting downloads. He started hearing voices, and then he realized that he was Arcturian. And now it's just completely opened him up. And it was because of one of those movies.
Yeah, if you take that guy now and say, hey, why don't you go back in time and explain to yourself then what's going on and see how you accept yourself. It's like, it's kind of funny when you think about it. It's, and so, it's like we tell ourselves to take a hike, basically. But
for all those people that don't fit in or felt like they never fit in as a kid, and, you have so much of that.
Any tricky.
Yeah. Well, if you think about this, the reason people mostly don't fit in, they don't feel, they look at this civilization, how it behaves, what they're doing to each other, what they're doing to the planet and everything else, and they just don't fit in. It's because you're probably not from here, and you're more connected on a soul level to your Palladian life or some other life in a higher civilization. And all of a sudden when they find this out, they go, wait a second, I'm okay. I'm all right. I've been all right. And the whole world has been telling me there's something wrong with me.
Okay, so you guys, Nicole and Lisa, you've told me that I'm from where?
I'm not sure where you're from.
No,
we're waiting for your Akashic records to be read, but we know you're a starseed.
Yeah, we know you're a starseed.
But I've never had that feeling. I've never felt that I don't belong.
But you love Star Trek.
Hell yeah. But I don't. It's not that I don't belong on Earth. It's just
Did you ever feel awkward as a kid, like that you were different than other kids and you just felt like you couldn't relate to them?
Well, that's because I was smarter than everybody I know. So.
I never felt like I didn't belong. I never felt that. But I always was looking up to the sky and asking questions, trying to communicate with someone out there.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the traits, you're always kind of looking up and looking at the sky, and you know there's something up there. The good news is that, we don't have to go anywhere now because they're coming here. So, for all those people that have been waiting for so long and they know there's a bigger picture and something much bigger than what we're doing here, we're about ready to have a big reunion.
That's interesting because I've always looked at the sky and I love looking at stars and constellations and
clouds
and just looking up. But again, I don't have this deep-seated feeling that I don't belong. To me, that's just to me, that's a part of, math and science, and that's something to be explored and understood, and it's beautiful. And I don't feel like I belong up there. It's incredible. Who wouldn't want to look at the incredible pictures that we get from the Hubble telescope? And it's like, wow, who wouldn't want to look at all this kind of stuff? And to me, that's the same as looking at, beautiful paintings or looking at the deep oceans and the animals that we have in our oceans and the animals that we have in our jungles. And to me, that's
you'd be
all
surprised.
One thing to be explored.
You'd be surprised at how many people don't look up and are not interested.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of people that just look at their feet.
I'm so surprised. I'm always looking up. I love to open the sunroof and look up when I'm driving, and I've said stuff to people before, and they just look at me like, "What are you talking about?" Like, "Oh yeah." I'm like, "You didn't see the stars tonight? Like, how can you not see this stuff?"
Yeah, there's one thing I wanted to cover before I forget, but like a lot of Pleiadians that come here, a good analogy of a Pleiadian would be like the loving, happy, joyous blonde that doesn't get it, and they want to love everybody. They can't understand why somebody would actually lie to them or steal from them or anything, and they just get their butts kicked down here because they're on a different program. And a lot of them are Nordic. They're very Nordic and their genetics are Nordic. And a lot of people are aligned with that, and they really have a hard time being down here because they're too sensitive and they're on a different frequency. They operate differently. Now the people in the Orion system, they're of the same origin. They're from the ancient Lyrians as well, are their forefathers, and they're different because they went through the Orion Wars, and they went through the wars with the reptilians and everything else. So they realized that there is a dark side and that there is a dark force, and you got to pay attention. And they're more grounded, and they do really well here on the Earth.
Centurions.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different beings that are like, the Andromedans. They're mythologically known as archangels, basically. And they're 8 to 10 foot tall beings. They have magnetic light bodies. They went all the way through the physical and back. So they're also you can't really mess with that. They understand the base physical reality, and they went all the way back. And, but there's different groups coming here. Like the Greys don't have a sense of humor. They don't understand a joke, or things like that. They're very just mental, and they don't understand the emotional body at all. So, there's a lot of different things that are going on, and to get into the bigger picture, when we look out into the universe, and we know there's at least 200 billion suns in the Milky Way, at least, with planets around them. And we also know there's over 500 billion galaxies out there, and so you do the math and you just go, why wouldn't there be something else out there? It makes no sense to me at all, considering the numbers, and the odds and why wouldn't there be more advanced races out there? And if
there's not, that's an awful waste of space from movies, right?
And if they came here and we're primitive and aggressive, why would they interact with us? They would just observe us, and they would kind of keep their distance, which makes sense.
I have a question for you that I'm curious, because I feel like your answer. Okay, well, I'm actually, I don't want to preface it. What are your thoughts on people who prefer the scientific way only to prove things versus people who allow the knowing to come through their body, through their cellular level?
Well, you're going to get to the same place, you know. So, you know, science will eventually take you there. Just as I just said, when you start contemplating how vast this universe is, and then you start getting into the multi-dimensions and everything else, you're going to end up eventually in the same place. But, you know, even Einstein said, you know, he goes, alas, I'm without all mathematics to touch upon forever. And he talks about the limitations of science and math and things. But definitely, I think science is a slower pace, and most people are using their intellect, which is just a drop in the sea of consciousness. And it's a slower pace, but it'll take you there anyway. I mean, we have technology at our place. We have, you know, third generation night vision. We have Harold Oldfield technology that we use called PIP technology. And we've actually documented the interactions with these higher dimensional beings, and you can actually film it with these technologies. And so we do, you know, so the more you get into these technologies, you know, you're going to realize that we're not alone. And my brother and I were talking earlier, you know, we're sitting on these computers right now. There's all kinds of energies flying around, you know, coming into the computer, coming into your phone. All these things are happening all around us, but we can't see it. You know, because we can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. No, it's just outside of our ability to see it. It's in a different bandwidth of the visible light. Well, we can only see a small part of the visible bandwidth. And there's so much going on outside that once we understand that, and the more you meditate, the more you can see more of the bandwidth and you can experience. And the real connection comes through the heart, basically, because your heart, there's more neurons in your heart. There's more electrical activity in your heart. Your soul sits right next to the heart. Your soul's connected to the source. And so there's an old saying, you know, the mind is a great servant, but it's a terrible master. And you really want to drop into the heart and connect in that way to the multidimensional aspects of self. And that's what we practice. Like in Qigong, it's called the absence of mind or no mind. When you're doing these practices, you're using both sides of the body. Your mind has something to do, and eventually you get into that state of no mind, and then you get the big download.
Did you say, and I know you said this, I need clarification. I never heard this anymore. There is a physical location in the body for the soul?
Yes, exactly. There's a little cavity there, and it sits next to the heart. And that has so much electrical potential. If you're doing heart surgery and you touch that with a metal instrument, you'll short the guy out. You know, the doctors know this. But there is a spot there, and that's where it sits. It sits right next to the heart, and it's like a soul cavity.
That makes sense to me. I know that I've heard, you know, two minds together is very powerful, but when you bring two hearts together, it's like times 10 of two minds.
You know, if you go to Heart Math, there's a whole books written about this, about the electrical potential and the neurons in the heart versus the brain. And there's so much more potential there in the heart than the brain, you know. So we've kind of been taught backwards that, you know, unfortunately Atlantis, that's what happened to Atlantis. They just went into technology, and then they started using it to control and dominate others and power over others. And then they end up collapsing the whole system because they got out of balance. And the Lemurian side of it, they were more heart-centered. They saw the creator in all creation. You know, they were under the law of one, and they operated on a different thing. And so, you know, we're kind of going there now, but I think we're not going to do the same thing we did in Atlantis.
So how do you really know when you're operating from the heart versus the mind? Is it just more through your feelings, or what is it exactly?
When you meditate, you end up there, basically. Your mind, I'll tell you a secret about meditation. You cannot stop the mind. Forget about it. You can't. It's going to run. But you don't stop it. You let it run. It'll run out of gas. You sit there and let it run. and all these thoughts and weird things come up, you just observe it, let it run. And then it runs out of gas. But you focus on the heart while you're doing this, and you focus on love and joy and bliss, the higher frequencies, and then all of a sudden you're on the next level, and it's going to run there for a little while, and then it's going to run out of gas, and then you go to the next level. And that's really the secret behind meditation, because if you're trying to stop the mind, your ego's involved. You're trapped in the ego, because the ego thinks it's doing it. And it's not about doing, it's about surrendering and just releasing, letting it go, letting it run its course.
Yeah, I wrote a blog about that very topic, about why stilling the mind isn't working for you. And I just, my take on it was that I just feel like the energies are so much faster here now that if we try to still our mind, we're going against the very flow of energy, and it's not working for us. And that there's so much more creative flow that comes in when we just move into that allowance state, what you were just talking about, like let it run, as opposed to the ego trying to control everything.
Is that the mind or the brain that you're trying to really stop?
Well, both, both. The mind exists. Well, the brain is separate, it's just a receiver and transmitter, and, a big blob of fat, basically. but your mind actually exists outside of that.
Well, that's good advice for meditation, just because I'm like that, it's really hard to stop it. And I've been practicing, meditation for a while, and I know enough not to get trapped in those thoughts and just kind of let them go. But you're absolutely right. Once you kind of sink into that just feeling of bliss and love and gratitude, and then all of it does sort of just dissipate.
Yeah, it does. I mean, there's times, like I'm down in Mexico right now, and there's sometimes you go into town, and I usually go out away from town, and there's kind of secluded beaches, and I'll do my Qigong practices, and I meditate, and I might jump in the ocean, and if I don't do that, I feel like crap. I feel heavy and lethargic and everything. It's amazing if I don't take that time to just really get centered in and release, the other stuff, happening, and even just taking a break from Eceti. I come down here and recharge, because when I'm at Eceti, I'm doing back-to-back counselings and doing workshops and meditations, and plus half the time I have a shovel in my hand. I do all the grunt work too there as well.
Okay, sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you definitely have to just stop and let yourself relax.
And you can make I was meditating once, and I was meditating, connecting with Baba G, and I said, what's the most powerful thing I can teach people here? What's the best way to get people to open up? And he said, put a shovel in their hand, and I didn't understand what he was saying at the time, but anytime you do something repetitious, like a repetitive act, your mind has something to do. And everything can become a meditation. Washing dishes, anything. Sweeping, all of that can become a meditation. And when you give your mind something to do, then that distracts the mind, so the other information can come in.
That's so true.
It's funny. Sorry, Nicole.
No, I was just gonna say, because Michael runs a lot, and he finds that like just something that really grounds him and brings him brings him into center, right, Michael?
Yeah, running and exercise in general, but also just driving. I mean, I have like long drives almost daily, and so I usually have 2 or 3 hours in the car daily, and so I find time to zone out. I like how you explained. I think out of all of our guests, and even including Nicole and Lisa, you explained how to, if you're starting the meditation, how to do it correctly with your way of saying, eventually your mind's going to run out of gas. You're going to just not necessarily think about all the things. And I think a lot of people's frustration, including mine at the beginning, was really just trying to quiet the mind. I hate when people say it's like quiet the mind. It's like when you're going through depression and people are like, oh, just be happy. It just doesn't work that way. And so that was a very great, a good way of just helping myself to actually go, yeah, that makes sense. That will So you don't beat yourself up too if it's like 15 minutes into a meditation and you're still thinking about like, some, I don't know, random event in your life that means nothing. So anyway, I do appreciate that. As far as
running does that. Running, when you get into that zone when you're running and all of a sudden you're just like, and you have all this extra energy and you're just cruising, that's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely started off meditating through running and other things like just painting. Like actually I'm painting our house right now and just doing some of it's just such a repetitive thing, and I can do it for like 4 hours and just really enjoy it. Like I don't mind at all doing these things. It's very relaxing to me.
It's all in your head. Sometimes I have some great volunteers up there, and we have a lot of people that come and help out. And sometimes they get into a funk and go, I'm not doing this anymore. And I go, it's all in your head, and I'm doing this and I'm doing all this stuff, and it's just emotional issues coming up. But the reality of the fact is that, it's like, I start up, early in the morning and work till late at night. And because I love what I'm doing and I'm aligned with my soul purpose, and I really enjoy it, no matter what it is. It doesn't matter if I'm digging a ditch, or gardening or moving stones or whatever, so, but I know it's just a mindset. You can feel victimized, or you're too much is happening, or all these issues come up, parental issues, things like that. And it's just, once you let go of that, you just cruise. Life becomes much easier.
It's like Karate Kid, wax on, wax off, wax on,
yeah.
wax off.
Exactly.
Yeah, pretty much.
Do you have a couple more minutes to talk about one more thing?
Sure.
Okay, I wanted to ask you, you have said that at your Eceti, Australia ranch that they're now having Pleiadians show up.
Oh, yeah. That's Peter and Solrita, and they have Peter Slattery. And actually, it's Solrita Slattery now because they just got married. But they're getting amazing footage, just like we are at Eceti. And they're Eceti Australia, and the reason I chose them to be Eceti Australia because they have their hearts there. They're very focused, they're very loving, and they're very enlightened too at the same time. And they're getting the most amazing footage of ships coming. I was staying at their house in Melbourne, and we go out at night, and the ships are just everywhere, cruising right over their house. And plus we went in the outback. We traveled all over up and down the coast doing lectures. And everywhere we went, we had ships, and we were hanging out with the elders there, the Aboriginal elders, and we had ships come flying right over our heads, and it's all in a documentary. But they're having we have the same thing too, but they're actually getting incredible photographs of these higher dimensional beings, these Pleiadians actually showing up in their house, and they have a lot of other photographs, and where they took the picture was the same room I stayed in while I was there, so I know exactly where that picture was taken. And these guys are their integrity levels are off the scale. They wouldn't fake anything, and you can tell it's already been analyzed, and you can tell it's not, it's not any CIG or anything else.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, to me, it's just so exciting to, it's just so exciting to hear people having these experiences, and it's becoming more frequent. I feel like more people, or maybe just more people, are talking about it now. But
they just had what's his name? Not Hannity. What's the other guy on Fox News?
Tucker.
Tucker, yeah, he just brought it out. He just did a big thing on UFOs, and actually Hannity came out. But I've had CBS and ABC and all those guys come out to the ranch, and they did an okay job, but they sanitized it. They didn't show the really good footage, but hopefully we can rectify that and bring out the good stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think we need a what was called a field trip out to Eceti.
Yeah, exactly.
So, when do you guys open up?
Probably, I'll be there April. we're there, but we're kind of fixing things up. And every year there's a lot of storm damage and flooding, and then, there's pretty usually heavy snows there. And this year it was a lot of rain. But, we just have to kind of do some repairs here and there and get it ready. But we'll probably open in May. And from then on. And I always tell people, don't take my word for anything. Have you come up, do your own research, have your own experience, because then it's real for you. Danny Dyer came up, and Robbie Williams, the UK pop star, all those guys. And that's exactly what they said. They said that, you can't take this away from me. He said, I saw it. I came here, I saw it. They go, we're on UFO overload right now. And they said, you can't take that away.
I feel like, because I know, Michael, you're always saying that you just, and I totally get it. You want that experience so that it's true for you, not just in your mind, but you've lived it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
that's
place,
what it should be, actually.
Yeah,
and that's the hardest part for this whole conversation, and that's the hardest part of dealing with Lisa and Nicole, was these beliefs of aliens. I mean, I believe in aliens. I just have a hard time believing they're running around on a daily basis, and and for some reason every damn picture I see about quote unquote UFO is always just blurred out just enough so you really don't see detail, at least the ones that I've saw. And then now you're just saying that there's like in the news, people are coming up, but they're holding back footage. I mean, it just pisses me off when I hear stuff like that. It's like, why? And if, why are we, is the world not ready for them? Okay, I understand that, if that's the easy way out. But it's like you could easily drop a ship in, let's say Manhattan, and I'm pretty sure the whole world would start believing pretty damn quick. So
yeah. They actually did that. They had 12 ships right over Manhattan, and it did hit the news. They had 12 ships floating right over, and they flew right down the New York Turnpike there, whatever that big. They flew ships right down.
I mean, it's like, and yet we have beautiful pictures and videos of random tornadoes in random places. Yet we still can't really get something like this. It just.
But who owns the news? Who owns the news network?
Okay, Lisa, we can go into the conspiracy of the news and higher up people holding the shit back from us. Yeah. But at the same time, that's what pisses me off if that's the case. Well, one thing, I would love to see it with my own two eyes, because there's just enough discrediting sources out there to say this is all bunk, Yeah.
There is a lot of CGI out there. There is a lot of time when you see the really clear stuff, really defined stuff, it's CGI, because most of the ships, the energy field around the ship always distorts them a little bit, and it's harder. You're not going to see writing on the ship or a nut or a bolt or something like that. Right. And the real ships are when they power up, they go from a physical craft more to energy. And if they're going to jump light years, they go into a light spectrum. So the ship powers up and it raises its frequency, and it's like, and then they're gone. They're just gone in a second. And just by that, when you see that happen, you go, well, that's not explainable, by our technology.
And the hard thing, I think, for a lot of people is when I look at the footage that that I saw that you guys have shared, your counterpart in Australia when he came, and that was a nice bit, and the video footage looks the same as an iridium flare, so that's what makes it also hard.
But the problem is we have that documented as when the flares are, and we have these things treetop level. I mean, they go right. I showed footage of a ship going right into the mountain, stopping, morphing into 4, back to 1 again. I took it down to OMSI Planetarium, and we took it to NASA, and they said it was the space station, that we had mistaken it for the space station. And I said, it's on the mountain, it's on, right. It could not maintain trajectory there, it would hit the mountain, it's like.
Right. There's math behind it.
Yeah. And so I go, the common sense factor, basically you see this, below treetop level, you've got, from 10 to 200 people on the ground screaming and yelling that all witnessed it, and they have it on their, you get it on 3 or 4 cameras. Obviously that's really hard to deny, but there are people out there that do. No matter how much evidence, you'll never be able to prove it.
That's because I think inherently we want to touch it. And if I can't touch it, if I can't hold it in my hand,
it's not real.
I can't truly believe it.
Can you touch Lisa's love?
Science. Yeah, can you touch the energy coming into your computer? It's like it goes back to that. But a lot of these beings, they're not from this dimension. They're extremely advanced beings. But there are some that are in our dimension, and a lot of the really physical craft that people are seeing are actually a lot of government. They're back engineered, through the secret space fleet, which is a whole other show. But
well, this has just been fun. Yeah, and I can't tell you, James, how happy I am that you came on the show, and Brian is like all 100% in, ready to come up to Eceti. Like,
great.
Yeah, sorry for calling you a crazy yogi.
Oh, it doesn't bother me. I've been called worse, trust me.
You're near Mount Adams, right?
Yeah, we're right pretty much at the base of Mount Adams.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful out there. I have to admit that. All right, well, we'll talk about it. Maybe I'll go.
Well, there's a river. We're right on the White Salmon River, so you can go and catch some fish or do whatever else you want to do.
Hike.
You can windsurf. You can ride. It's a rapid. It has some really good rapids on it. You can go river rafting or paddleboarding.
Do that's for sure.
The whole time, all I've been wanting to ask, but I didn't think it was, the right question. I just how's the fishing?
Oh yeah, it's great. It's I can walk down the end of my driveway and get a trout if I want. And now that they took the dam out, the salmon are coming all the way up now. So too, but I haven't caught a salmon off my driveway. But you just go a little further down, you can catch. They call it white salmon. It's kind of rare. But a lot of salmon, a lot of trout, a lot of. Oh God, I'm trying to remember what those guys are on the bottom. Sturgeon. There's some bass. You go further down the Columbia River, they've got a lot of bass fishing and things.
Well, James, I've got all your information on our website. So for all our listeners, if you want to find any more information about James, I've got all of that on our website. But just for right now, do you want to just let our listeners know how they can get in contact with you or where else they can find you at? 'Cause I know you've got your own radio show as well.
Yeah, I'm on the BBS Radio Network. It's bbsradio.com. And you can go there, and it's As You Wish Talk Radio. It's every Saturday night at 8 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And then we have the Eceti.org if you want to go to the website. And then there's EcetiEvents.com if you want to find out the latest events. But the web Eceti.org will take you there too. And on the YouTube, if you want to see a lot of this footage, you can go to Eceti Stargate. It's called the official channel. Other people have copied us and copied some of our stuff, and I don't know why they do that. I kind of do know why, but it's a long story. But go to Eceti Stargate, the official channel, and you can see a lot of the footage, and the radio shows are up there too if you want to check those out.
Great. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, anytime.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it. It's been great.
We take skeptics up there and we throw some third generation night vision on them, and all of a sudden their whole world changes because all of a sudden everything just in your face.
And there's no ayahuasca tea involved. It's straight up.
No,
right?
no, we have no drug policy, like no alcohol, no drugs, because we want to kind of do things spiritually, and also too is first question everybody asks is what were you smoking, and so we kind of enforce that policy.
Yeah. So Nicole, about this going to Washington where there's no whiskey. Yeah.
We can go out for dinner and have a shot.
Yeah. Yeah, you can go dry for a day or two. Come on.
I think he can handle it.
I tell you, you'll be so high you won't need the whiskey. You just come on the well, you'll feel it.
I bet.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on. And to our listeners, all of this information will also be left in the show notes. And if you have any questions or topic ideas that you'd like us to share with you, please send those into info@enlightenup.us. And yeah, I guess we'll be back next time. So thanks again, James. You've been an awesome guest. We've really appreciated having you on, and maybe we can have you on again for some deeper talk on those space programs.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. And, thanks for having me on the show, and looking forward to seeing you guys up at the ranch.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun. We're gonna do a pre-show and a post-show for that.
Great.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Have a great night, and we'll be back next week.